Hello, I'm Jordan Shelley. I'm a dog trainer from North London. I've been a trainer now for 3 years, and prior to that I was a veterinary nurse down in the south coast of Spain, and before that I was a kennel manager. What really interested me about the training side of things was, whilst working at the vets, seeing all the animals that found it particularly difficult to be treated because they didn't like vets, they didn't like being in the vet clinic, and that kind of behavioural side of things first got me into wanting to work in behaviour. I worked alongside two different trainers before coming to England and starting training myself. They were both ex-army trainers, and then I went on to dog walking to start with when I first came back, and then started working as a trainer. In September 2011 I was on the BBC One show, and it was actually footage that was taken from a pilot that I've been making for a training show. That was used on there, and I've been cut and so on, so I wasn't exactly portrayed in the best light. The techniques that I used were what was taught to me by more traditional trainers and the first trainers that I've worked with. And it came to my attention that during the whole thing with the One show, a lot of people disagreed with them being used, and there was a bit of an outcry of the public. Facebook went a bit mental, and then through that, was introduced to Dr. Ian Dunbar and Kelly, who are incredibly lovely people, who took me out to America. I stayed with them for a little bit, went to his seminar, science-based dog training with feeling. Ian's serious puppy training is really fascinating. He's the first puppy training class that was off-lead in the world. A lot of the puppy classes I've been to elsewhere, people spent a lot of time sitting down on a chair in the corner of their room whilst the puppies were kind of interacting, whereas this really had people, the owners were really involved. I think that's really important. And I went to the APDT annual conference out there and listened to some incredible speakers. And it was just interesting to hear various different techniques and views on how training should be done. A lot of the argument now within their own circles is to do with whether certain things are aversive or aren't aversive, whether punishment should be used at all, even if it's a non-aversive punishment. So it's kind of moved on a lot from where I was, but there's still interesting debates going on. There was two trainers in particular that I met at the APDT conference that I listened to their seminars of were Grisha, Stewart, who was doing a talk on BAT. BAT is behaviour adjustment training, which is fascinating, and it's all to do with when you have a dog that's particularly reactive towards something, decreasing the distance between you and that object without taking the dog over threshold. And Suzanne, Clothier, who's an incredible speaker, and I would love 5 minutes inside of her brain. I mean, she's an amazing lady. No, they were really wonderful people, really wonderful people. The way in which I train dogs has changed a lot. It's still taking time for me to put things into practice, but slowly I'm getting there. The most important thing that I learned at my time away was probably keeping the dog under threshold, which means not making it react to the situation you're trying to train it to be better behaved in. So for example, if you were working with a dog and a food bowl and there was food aggression, you'd be working much more slowly and making sure that you didn't actually make that dog get angry in the first instance, so that you can build up on the behaviour and reward it whilst it's still calm. The benefits of these methods, as Ian said to me, was to do with the fact that there's so many different ways in which a dog can do something wrong, and so you'll be constantly correcting the dog, whereas there's actually only one way the dog can do something right. So if you show it what to do, you then take away a whole load of stress that you could be putting onto the animal by having to constantly correct it. Suppression of behaviour is very dangerous because you can suppress something so much that the dog no longer warns you that it feels like something, like it will no longer growl and then it will just turn around and bite. So I think it's really important to make sure that you're not doing any of those things. I would advise anyone to go and look at as many different people as they can and make a decision that's based on what they feel comfortable with. The advice I give to professionals who are advising their clients would be that if you are using the more traditional techniques, they can work if they're used by a professional. The problem is when you're teaching someone who doesn't really understand them, you have a real potential for a backlash from the dog, which is something I never understood because I've always been the one that was working with the dog. So, you know, when you see what can happen, there's less chance of things going wrong, and if things do go wrong when using positive reinforcement, they're not going to be anywhere near as dangerous as what could go wrong when using dominance-based methods. Yeah, I mean, I'm still carrying on working with dogs. At the moment, I'm not seeing clients, but I will be in the next couple of weeks. Really, at the moment, I've just been trying to educate myself more. Obviously, that will never stop, and I'll have to carry on doing that forever and ever, which is great. But I will carry on working with dogs, and I hope to be training dogs again pretty soon. I will be back at the APDT conference next year. I had such a good time. Yeah, it was brilliant. I'd like to thank Beverley, Cuddy of Dogs Today for introducing me to everyone, to Ian and to everyone at the APDT basically. And I'd like to thank Ian and Kelly for being so hospitable and putting up with me for 2.5 weeks. And I'd like to thank everyone at the APDT for being so welcoming and willing to help people learn.